Man, I just want to say a huge thank you to Oklahoma City, the fans, everybody for the way that you guys welcomed me back with open arms after starting my first 2 years in the city. I hate that it ended as early as it did, but Oklahoma City will always have a special place in my heart. Nothing like it. And as y'all know, go Thunder, Thunder up. Peace and respect.
After watching that video, if you don't think Chris Paul's time with the OKC Thunder is up, I'm not exactly sure what to tell you. I'm pretty sure that's as close to a goodbye you can say without saying goodbye. And after a great season in OKC, a season in which he took the Houston Rockets to 7 games in the playoffs, I think it's safe to say Chris Paul will be moving on and Chris Paul will be getting traded this offseason. So with that being said, despite his hefty contract, still an all-star and one of the top 15, top 20 players in the NBA, there's going to be a few teams that are looking to take the gamble and looking to take on that big contract and looking to bring the point guard into their squad. So who's going to be that team that takes the chance, that trades away their younger assets for an older Chris Paul in the hopes of winning a championship in the next 1 to 2 years? Because although he'll probably regress, he might regress, I'm not sure, and he has injury concerns, one thing you know is Chris Paul's still going to deliver in clutch time, and he's still going to be close to an all-star level player up until retirement. It just seems like that's going to be the way he ends his career. Now quickly before I get into the video, if you could drop a like right now, that would be greatly appreciated. These videos do take quite a bit of time to make, and liking the video genuinely changes how the course of the video does, and it means a lot, thanks. The first option, and probably the most likely option, is the Milwaukee Bucks. It was reported earlier this year that Chris Paul wanted to be traded to the Bucks prior to landing in OKC with the hopes of teaming up with Giannis, Chris Middleton, and forming a dynamic trio. I mean, you can see why he would have wanted that. It's a pretty good situation for him. You get to play alongside the reigning MVP, and you get to play alongside another all-star in Chris Middleton, and a team that looked destined to make the Eastern Conference Finals, although that doesn't look like happening now, but still one of the best teams in the NBA regardless of their deficiencies. But it doesn't just make sense for CP3 to want to go to the Bucks, it makes sense for the Bucks to want to bring him there. Because although Giannis is only 25, and although Middleton's only 29, the rest of their roster is aging, and aging fast. You've got Wesley Matthews, Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, Brook Lopez, all these guys are approaching mid-30s, and a decline is sure to happen sooner rather than later. So surrounding Giannis with a player that can win now and taking advantage of an MVP level player while you have him is probably what the Bucks need to do in order to keep him, in order to win now while they have the chance. In terms of constructing a trade, it's kind of hard to understand the value of Chris Paul because despite him being one of the best players in the league, he is getting old. He is very old. He's not getting old, he is old. And despite being healthy this season, he has had injury concerns in the past. And he has a huge contract, so you're going to have to pay over the odds for him. So he's a great player, but with a lot of concerns. So that makes me think you won't have to give up everything to get him, but you might have to give up a future asset or two and add in some contracts like Bledsoe, like Ilyasova. Maybe a DiVincenzo might be the piece that has to be moved to OKC in order for them to say yes. Something like that I could see happening. I don't really go too much into the trades, but that's something I could see materializing potentially. Another obvious candidate would be Philadelphia. They have done everything wrong regarding free agency and trading, so why not take another chance on an aging player, but this time they would actually be signing a player that was once a superstar and is currently a star, so it might be worth considering for them. I'm not in a rush. I wouldn't be in a rush to trade either Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, like some people are proposing, but they're going to need to support these two, and the idea of having Ben play at the 4 was just taking shape before he sustained an unfortunate injury. And despite not being a high-volume three-point shooter, CP3 has always been a pretty good one, and the benefits obviously extend way past just his outside shot. He was the league's best clutch time performer, and he provides a consistent half-court offense when teams go to double Embiid down the stretch, and Philly just don't have any answers for it. So having CP3, who'll come in there, he'll be a cool head, he'll score points, and he'll deliver in the clutch, is probably worth it in itself, let alone another ball handler, another shooter, and maybe even most importantly, a locker room presence, a leadership person in Chris Paul, something that Jimmy Butler brought to Philly just before leaving, and something that seemed to really help them, clearly going as close as they've come to a finals appearance in a long time. The obvious issue with the 76ers making this trade is they are handicapped by the ridiculous contracts they've given out to Al Horford, Tobias Harris, and those two players. They would have to give up something or a few things in order for OKC to consider taking on one of those terrible contracts. That's just the reality. Although Philly would be reluctant to get rid of Matisse Thybulle, he's probably the kind of piece you would have to let go of in order to get someone like Chris Paul if you're offloading Tobias Harris's or Al Horford's contract in the process. So potentially Thybulle, Horford/Harris, and maybe a first round pick and something else, whatever makes up the salary, is probably a deal that would seem about right. I know Philly fans love Thybulle. Unfortunately, you just have to give up assets in order to get them back. And although Ben Simmons and Embiid aren't old and still have time left on their contract, the 76ers have signaled their intentions to win now, and Embiid doesn't seem exactly happy not winning, considering he sees Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat doing so well and thinks that could be him if he requests a trade or moves in free agency. So it's probably time for the 76ers to go all in, and Chris Paul might be the right option to take the next step. And finally, the last team that has had reported interest in CP3 is the LA Lakers, and you can see why. There's no two ways to put it. This team needs to win now. They don't have a second option. LeBron's not exactly young. He's getting on in age, and Anthony Davis is still yet to signal his intentions to stay in LA. He's always said he wants to go back to Chicago. He doesn't seem determined to pledge his allegiance to LA, and with a player option looming in next free agency, he could go ahead and opt out of that, but the Lakers might be able to convince him to stay and make another run with CP3 coming in and the formidable that him, Chris Paul, and LeBron James would make up. Chris Paul makes a lot of sense because the Lakers just have no guard play. They have no one there. Outside of LeBron, the playmaking and the shot creation for himself and for others is just non-existent pretty much. And the little playmaking they do get from Caruso and Rondo comes at a cost because neither of them are consistent enough outside shooters. And that has been the main issue with the Lakers all year, a severe lack of outside shooting. CP3 gives them a lot of what they need, a reliable outside shooter and much needed playmaking and some much needed help for AD and LeBron. Because as I've stressed all year, the Lakers have the best duo in the league, one of the best duos you could ask for, but they have nothing else. The rest is a dumpster fire. People thought maybe Kyle Kuzma would be that third option. He's not. We don't know who that third option is. Chris Paul would be a very, very handy third option. Whoever else they could fill a roster spot with, it wouldn't even matter. In terms of a trade between these two teams, they would have to give up pretty much every role player they have. Kuzma, Caruso, Green, KCP, whoever you have that can fill the salary and a first round pick, whatever needs to be done, they're going to have to give it up because the Lakers don't have any assets anymore. They traded them all for Anthony Davis. So getting rid of those role players would need to be done in order to match the contract and give OKC something of value. I'm not exactly sure what it'll take, but the Lakers are probably going to have to do what it takes because I don't see a third option, and I think they're going to struggle without a third option to win a championship. The window on a championship is running out for all of these teams. Giannis, Embiid, and Simmons aren't old, either is AD. AD hasn't signaled his intentions to stay in LA. You'd think if Milwaukee crash out of the playoffs again, they could be in serious trouble of losing Giannis, and Embiid doesn't seem particularly happy in Philly. So despite the age of these players, these star players on these teams, I think the time is now to make a trade and bring in someone that'll help them win now and hopefully win a championship within the next 1 to 2 years. As always, if you did enjoy the video, a like would be greatly appreciated. I'm trying to make this type of content about 5 times a week, even more. So if you do enjoy that kind of content, subscribe to the channel. If you made it to the end of the video, I mean, you must have enjoyed it, I think. So subscribe, like for that. Catch you next time.